And now I'd like to welcome to TVP World Zarina Zabrisky, good friend of ours. She's in the frontline city of Kherson right now. Hello, Zarina, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, we know that Kherson is constantly under attack and you're constantly in the thick of it. So what can you tell us about the current situation?
Well, we are currently under attack. You might hear some explosions. They come at every 5 minutes now, pretty loud out of my window. Just within the last hour, one person was killed. It was a taxi driver, and two passengers in the car were injured. That was by a crowded supermarket. Earlier this day, I visited a state university where the first several, actually the top 3 floors were damaged, and the part of the roof is damaged. It was a medical department and also the Department of Physics and Chemistry. It's not the first time this university has been damaged. We've reported from the site several times. Buildings around always are hit by a shock wave, so practically no windows left. And this is an average day in the life of Kherson. Just yesterday, 17 settlements in the region were hit, and 2 high-rise buildings damaged, 10 private houses, and 2 killed and 4 injured.
Wow, yeah, we're trying to get some of those pictures up on the screen. Obviously, we have the wrong ones.
But there have been some other recent strikes these last few days. Can you tell us about what's been going on in Mykolaiv?
Yes, as a matter of fact, yesterday we have visited the city of Mykolaiv, which is another major seaport in the south of Ukraine. We were speaking to the representatives of the German government, visiting, giving them the overview of the situation in Kherson when 2 ballistic missiles hit Mykolaiv. So the delegation had to go downstairs to the shelter and hide there. And Mykolaiv is not hit as much as Kherson because it's further away from the front line, so artillery, tanks, mortar cannot reach it, but the ballistic missiles and cruise missiles can. And so is the situation in Odessa, where 2 days ago, a number of places in my neighborhood were hit. My hairdresser salon was damaged, and many places in vicinity. 2 women were injured.
So you were with this delegation in Mykolaiv. What was their reaction to coming under shelling, if you will? I know that usually sets the best impression on politicians to actually, do something and act.
Yes, I mean, they had a very humane reaction. Some had tears in their eyes on hearing about what's happening in Kherson. Some were scared, reasonably so, when the air raid started and when they had to be rushed to the shelter. One man asked me if you ever get used to it. And the answer is yes, you do. You get used to it, because what you see right now on the screen is that how a regular building in Kherson looks. And as a matter of fact, my building looks very much like that at this point. What you see on your screen is Kharkiv, not Kherson. But Kharkiv is being pummeled with artillery and missiles just as much as Kherson. So the results are the same.
Yeah, and you've been at this for a while now, and that is interesting to hear you say this now, because I remember some time ago it was very much, well, it's always surprising to hear these explosions, but you've been in Kherson now probably longer than any other foreign journalist. Are you really used to the daily shelling? Does the adrenaline kick in when it comes close?
No adrenaline. I mean, we just had few as I was waiting to speak to you. There's no adrenaline. As a journalist, I think it's perceived differently because I feel like I need to go there and report. But I know that other people, other residents, I got a lot of friends here by now. They just go on with their daily business. This morning, when between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., I heard a very, very loud explosion, and I felt the vibration of the walls through my sleep, but I didn't wake up because you get used to it. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but there are not that many shelters here, and it's practically impossible in Kherson to proceed to the shelter. You will have to sleep in the basements, and they are not really equipped for living or sleeping.
I'm going to change gears a little bit because obviously the things that you describe are, to us, these situations sound terribly traumatic, and you say that you get used to them, but obviously to us, it's hard to imagine how you can get used to them. But as a journalist, I'm sure that you follow what's been happening on the European scene and these tensions between the US and Ukraine regarding the grain deal or lack thereof. And I was wondering whether you could tell us about your impressions regarding what is happening in regards to the situation between Poland and Ukraine, and in general the EU and Ukraine.
Right. Well, thank you for this not easy to answer question. As a journalist, I think the best would be to report on the reaction of Ukrainian people, because I do interview quite a few just regular residents of Kherson. Also, we speak to military, interviewing them, some people who in a position of power, and I get pretty much the same response, both regarding the situation in Poland at the border and the situation with the delayed aid in the United States, and also the latest interview where the State Department advises claim that they do not encourage Ukraine to strike outside of Ukrainian territory. The reaction is disappointment, to say the least. The Ukrainian people feel betrayed. In fact, today, one former businessman and now volunteer told me that they perceive it as a not strong allies behavior, because in the 90s Ukraine gave up their arsenal of weapons. They did not go along this path. According to him, Ukraine is an agricultural country, and it could have been different, and it could have been so that Ukraine would be in a powerful position now to fight this invasion off. Nevertheless, Ukraine never took this path and trusted the allies to support Ukraine in a situation like we're having now. And this is not happening, and that leads to a lot of disappointment, bitterness, especially in the city of Kherson, where you literally see pools of blood on the street and walk on the shattered glass.
Well, what you describe indeed is very difficult, but I think it goes without saying that Poland really does lead the way when it comes to support for Ukraine, especially from a military perspective, but also from a strategic perspective. And, as Polish farmers protest, but also across Europe, because this doesn't necessarily limit itself to Polish farmers always emphasize, and I don't know if you've seen this footage, that they do support Ukraine, but they also need to protect their livelihoods. And would you, and obviously the people that you interview, not agree that this has to be a balanced situation whereby, the livelihoods of the Poles also need to be protected, because, we're looking at the long-term situation when it comes to supporting Ukraine and then subsequently helping Ukraine reconstruct itself, because that's what we're
maybe a good question, Zarina, is what is the perception of Poles now as compared to what we saw a few months ago? Poles had such a great reputation in Ukraine. Has anything changed as a result of this grain dispute?
Well, I don't necessarily enjoy being the bearer of bad news, but also as a journalist, I need to report what I see. And if in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the attitude to Polish people, to Poland, was love, warmth, open arms, gratitude, admiration everywhere. As you know, Don, I have worked quite a bit with Polish journalists, volunteers. I followed the caravan that delivered humanitarian aid from Krakow to Ukraine, and it was beautiful to watch. Obviously, right now, I cannot report any such sentiment. Like I said, there's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of a feeling of people who were left alone to fight this uneven fight. And fair enough, especially in Kherson, because even if you go to other areas, I passed on the way to south of Ukraine through the western Ukraine, the Carpathians. The situation is different there, and so obviously the attitude also is not as extreme. And even in Odessa, which, by the way, is being pummeled all the time too, the situation is easier. But in Kherson, or I'm sure Kharkov, or somewhere in Donbass, people tend to have less nuanced attitude. Everything in the war becomes black and white.
Right.
And so at the moment, the attitude to Poland leaves much to be desired. With that being said, there's a lot to work on there. And of course, there is a desire to restore this bond. And I know everybody hopes for the best outcome here.
Right. We are hoping exactly for the same. We're hoping that the politicians can make an agreement here in Warsaw, and hopefully we can put this sad chapter in the relationship behind us and move forward to what's really important. Zarina Zabrisky joining us from Kherson. As always, we appreciate it very much, and please do stay safe.
Thank you very much. You too.